Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Thanks for watching Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage Vault Series. The Vault Series is a series of interviews that we shot starting back in 2004, 2 years before the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum opened to the public. If you like what you see, please be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Thanks for watching. Today's clip is with the great drummer Max Weinberg. Our dear friend Gary Tallent, bass player with the E Street Band, introduced us to Max. Max graciously gave us this interview back when he was the drummer for the Conan O'Brian Show in New York. Max tells about how he got started as a drummer, how he met Conan O'Brian, and how he got with the E Street Band. Hope you enjoy it. Max Weinberg.
Well, I was born in Newark, New Jersey. I grew up in the suburbs in Newark. I was born in 1951. That would make me 53 years old now. I've been playing the drums since I was about 6. So it's been a long, long road for me.
6 years old.
That's right.
What enticed you to think you wanted to be a drummer?
Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked me that, because my first instance of wanting to become a drummer was seeing DJ Fontana play with Elvis Presley on the Milton Berle Show, before the Ed Sullivan Show. It was about 6 months before. I had 2 older sisters who, were Elvis fans, knew Elvis, knew who he was, of course. Mm-hmm. And, I was just 5 years old, and when the DJ played that introductory drum roll in Hound Dog, as primitive as TV was at that time, that just grabbed me, and I wanted to become a drummer right after that. And single-mindedly, that's what I sought out.
So that was the word epiphany, or the moment that is it stuck with you. You've never changed, never looked back.
Seeing DJ play with Elvis was the moment, that initial moment when I wanted to become a drummer and wanted to join the so-called community of musicians. It looked like it was a lot of fun. And, I was a little kid and I didn't know that much. I didn't know anything about the drums, really, but I could tell that the drums occupied an important position within Elvis's band, obviously. And my desire to become a drummer really was solidified a few years later when Ringo Starr played with the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. And that's what, now I was about 12 years old, so now I'd been playing drums for a few years, and I had more of an idea of what I wanted to do with my life.
Off the subject a little bit, we were with DJ last week, and he still has the Gretsch kit that he used the entire time. The Zildjian cymbal and all,
Well, that's fantastic. I know that he does, and he's still such a powerful drummer. We did a benefit in New Jersey right after 9/11, and DJ in the Sun Rhythm section came up. And it was fun for me because I got to see Bruce Springsteen play with the Sun Rhythm section. And DJ was just so powerful. He planted that beat so directly that it was fun for me to watch Bruce, who was really getting off on playing with DJ.
He's got a letter that you sent him on his wall in his house too, which I think was really great on your part too, to make sure that he gets inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as he should be, I think, as well. But we're definitely going to take care of that on our end at the Musicians Hall of Fame. But he was very proud of that, and I thought I'd pass on to you. So after you, what was your first drum kit? What kind did you get?
Well, I didn't get a drum set for several years, actually. My parents weren't in a financial position to be able to get me a drum set, so I used to practice on my bed. And I've always kind of thought that because I practiced on my bed with no rebound, that it developed my strong wrists and quickness in my hands, because I had to do everything muscularly instead of, with a bounce.
Right.
But my first drum set, which I got in 1963, was made by Kent.
Yeah.
And it was a good little drum set, and I could wail out on that thing. I don't have it, no. I sold that set to get my second set, which I still do have, which was a Rogers, gray ripple pearl.
5-piece?
3-piece. Who could afford 5-piece?
Really? Do you still have any of your old cymbals too?
I got all my old cymbals. In fact, I use my original Zildjian, which I got in 1960, I got a cymbal before I got a drum set. In those days, I think it was $28 for a new 20-inch cymbal.
That's great. That's what sticks are now. So, what was your first performance live? Were you in a school band? Or did you take formal lessons?
Well, I was in the school, grammar school, little orchestra we had. And, the interesting thing about that was I was the only drummer, so I had to play the bass drum with my right hand and the snare drum with my left hand. It was a marching Scotch bass drum, so I was like this.
Right.
And I guess my first paid performance was on a borrowed drum set in 1962 at a social function in Newark, New Jersey. So that was with really my first band. I had done little things before that with a local wedding band director, wedding band leader, who would have me come in as a little novelty act, and from the time I was 7 or 8 years old, and he would pay me $3 or $4 to play with his band, which was a lot of money in those days.
Yeah.
This is 1958, 59.
Right.
But I started playing, for $15 in 1962, I guess, at that first job.
What was the instrumentation of that band?
That was piano, string bass, and trumpet.
And what were the songs you were playing? What kind of songs were you doing?
We were playing mainly sort of Dixieland almost, When the Saints and that type of material that would lend itself to non-amplified instruments and a lead trumpet.
Mm-hmm. When did you get into your first combo with electric guitars and electric keyboards and maybe a singer, a front man or whatever? Did you sing?
I didn't sing. I guess the first time I played with a guitar player was the spring of 1963. I was at a party, and the guy had a guitar, and I had my drums there. And I was originally going to play with a piano player there, but he brought this guitar, and he couldn't play that many songs. But it was a great thrill to play with a guitar player finally, you can imagine. And, from then on, we just, wherever I could and whenever I could, I played.
Do you remember the name of your band?
My first band was called the Epsilons. It was popular to have Greek names for bands in those days, the Deltas, so the Epsilons was our name.
So when you saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, more people have said that was the moment that they decided that they wanted to be in a band.
Well, I had decided quite a long time before the Beatles played on the Ed Sullivan, but what the Beatles did for me and a whole generation, obviously, of people was to give you the possibility that maybe you could do that too.
Right.
And, one of the beauties of Ringo Starr's playing, which was beautiful, was that it was simple.
Right.
And, that's a good aspect of rock drumming, is that it's the feeling more than the technique.
Right.
And, when I saw the Beatles play, that really made me want to become a professional musician.
You're the first guy that's mentioned, that's my feelings on Ringo too. I think Ringo, at least I've always heard people kind of slam Ringo as maybe the lucky one in the band, but I always thought that he did his job. I thought he did what he was supposed to do with the songs he was given to play. He didn't overplay on them, and he made the songs happen, whereas a more aggressive drummer or somebody that's trying to show off more, would have taken away from the songs perhaps.
Well, Ringo may be perhaps the one drummer in musical history that doesn't need any defending, because all the drumming that came after him was really descended from him, in my view.
Yeah.
He established certain parameters of drumming that every drummer, studio drummers, rock band drummers, they all copied Ringo Starr. And not the least of which was that he was in the Beatles.
Right.
So as you say, he had a great platform for the material that he drummed on.
So, what happened with you after you started playing in, I guess, out of high school? What furthered your career in music?
Well, I just always played the drums, wherever and whenever I could. Didn't matter if I ever got paid or not. I just wanted to play the drums, and it defined my personality in a lot of ways, because it made me feel like I was connected to something bigger than myself, that I could contribute to something. I think much in the way that athletes on sports teams feel, like I was making a contribution. And my personal approach to drumming was always to be sort of a support player. You know, soloing wasn't my reason for being a drummer. I wanted to make the other people in the band look good.
Mm-hmm.
And consequently, as a result of that attitude, I was always able to find work,
Mm-hmm.
because that was just something it fit in with my abilities. And, you know, people who would be in a position to hire a drummer like that perspective,
Right.
that here's a guy who's going to do the job of a drummer,
Mm-hmm.
and let us, whether it's a sax player, lead singer, guitar player, let us do our thing.
Mm-hmm. So what led you into the studio? Did you start out doing any studio work here in town, or?
No, I was never a studio drummer. You know, I was always a rock band drummer. That was always my perspective. I've done some studio work through the years, but, you know, I was a guy who, you know, as Bruce once described me as taking what I could from Bernard Purdie, Keith Moon, and Buddy Rich and rolling it into my own personal style. So it was much more of a performance-oriented thing, and I'm a rock drummer, you know.
So how did that transition from your early bands to Bruce happen? How was that? What was that?
Well, I'd done
connection?
every kind of job imaginable, you know, just as a drummer, and it was a natural progression because, you know, growing up in New Jersey, there was a certain isolation, and I grew up in North Jersey. He grew up in Central Jersey, and as a drummer, you learn to basically play everything, which is what he wanted in a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wanted the ability to, you know, not necessarily be a virtuoso in every area of music, but to be a solid accompanist and be able to play a variety of styles, and that's what I was good at. But our musical backgrounds and the vocabulary with which we expressed our rock and roll instinct was very similar. All came up through Elvis, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys. So I knew that vocabulary of drumming, and that was the rudiments, if you will, and the vocabulary that he drew on for his songwriting.
So how did y'all connect? How did y'all meet?
Well, Bruce and the E Street Band put an ad in the Village Voice, which is a local newspaper in New York City, where they have always had a great section on music. And it was a want ad. I answered a want ad. It said wanted drummer, and it said, interestingly enough, no junior Ginger Bakers, which of course Ginger was the phenomenal drummer of Cream,
Mm-hmm.
but a soloist,
Mm-hmm.
and a frontman in his own right. And that's not what Bruce and the E Street Band wanted, and that's what he communicated in this ad, was that he wanted an accompanist. So myself and I think about 60 other drummers went down to audition in the summer of 1974, and he asked me to join the band.
Was this prior to any recording on his end?
But he had 2 records out at that point, Greetings from Asbury Park and The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle, and he was about to record what would become the Born to Run record, and he had recorded the Born to Run single, which was the E Street Band with a guy named Boom Carter, Ernie Carter on drums, played brilliantly on that record. So Ernie is on the single of Born to Run, but I played on the rest of the album.
Mm-hmm. And so that's been pretty much the gig since then, right?
Well, I've been fortunate to have a certain amount of longevity with the E Street Band, and we are an act that goes. We're sort of like, we go dormant and then we resurface,
Mm-hmm.
and for particular occasions, and I've been very fortunate to have so many of my rock and roll dreams, you might say, come true through the work with Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
What was that like in the studio? What's the typical Springsteen session like? I mean, does you just come in and does he already have the songs written, or do y'all kind of participate in how they, the structure of the songs, or?
Well, we did a movie called Blood Brothers, which pretty well documents the way we work. He, of course, has the songs, the words and the music. Nothing's written out or anything, and you just throw your 2 cents in. That's basically what it comes down to. The one thing the E Street Band knows how to do better than anybody else is play Bruce Springsteen's music, and it really is that. I put in the drum part, and the keyboard players play their parts, and everybody, it's a mix. It's like a stew, and most bands are like that. You bring your own distinct musical personality to the mix. And it's the beauty of the E Street Band is that as we play, when we actually mix ourselves. And it's just, you know, trial and error through the 35 years the band's been together.
So does Bruce pretty much let you do your thing on the drums? I mean, is that like he didn't say, hey, you know, Max, do this or that? You know, you pretty much.
Well,
know
yeah,
what he
that's what
wants.
I was driving at. Is
Yeah.
that it pretty much is your own instincts, you know. And of course, if there's something specific that Bruce or any songwriter wants, they'll let you know, and that is the job of a musician for hire, let's say. And the best guys have always been able to do that, whether they're DJ Fontana, Hal Blaine, Russ Kunkel, Earl Palmer, Kenny Buttrey. They all do that. They all give the songwriter what they want. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing your job.
I was sad we just lost Kenny.
Yeah.
You know. So how did this Late Night with Conan come about?
Well, the E Street Band disbanded in 1989, and I'd kicked around for a little while, and you know, it was interesting for me because I stopped drumming for several years, and then I missed it terribly. And long story short, wanted to become a drummer again, and it was about 3-4 years that I wasn't actively drumming, and I felt my ability to drum very slowly but inexorably failing me. That scared me. So I said, I better get back into this drumming game, you know, or I'm going to lose the ability to drum. And so I put myself out as a drummer, playing weddings, bar mitzvahs, anything, you know, just to drum. And I found that the heart of me is that of a drummer. I like to drum. And it had nothing to do with being in, quote, a successful rock band or being a successful musician. I just liked the physical act of drumming and making music. And I was determined that I was going to find a platform for my drumming. And shortly after I made that decision to just really go out and become a musician again, I met Conan O'Brian standing on the corner of 54th Street and 7th Avenue about a week after he'd gotten the late night job. And you know, we started to talk on the corner. One thing led to another. I put this band together.
So he was already a fan of the E Street Band.
I wouldn't quite categorize it as that. He knew who I was, but you know, his first instinct, well, you know, drummers don't typically lead bands, and I had a good idea for a band. Never told him I had a band, just had a good idea for a band. And as I said, one thing led to another, and I put this band together, and we auditioned, and Conan and his producers liked the band, and that was about 2 months after we met, and 10 days after we auditioned, we were on TV.
That's a rocking band too. I love listening to y'all play.
Thank you.
So now they just got the, you know, I guess you're going to go with Conan to the prime time slot when Jay Leno's over with?
Well, we're all delighted with Conan's opportunity there to go over to the Tonight Show. You know, it's probably the longest announcement, you know, pre-gig in history, but it's a terrific opportunity.